Indie housing market. Get the latest insights right here.
Welcome back to Indie Housing Market. I'm Kyle.morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker.
I'm Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group and FC Tucker. And today we have a wonderful guest, and I'm having her on because of a conversation I had on the phone with her about my marriage making my homestead exemption fall off. So anyway, this is Sadie Eldridge, and she is with us. And tell me, is it the auditor's office or the assessor's office?
It is the auditor's office.
So can you explain the difference between clerk, auditor, assessor?
Sure. So the auditor's office is the fiscal body for Hamilton County. In particular, my department deals with real estate tax deductions, tax sale, conveyance documents, such as a deed.
That's the way she's here.
The assessor's office is going to handle your assessed value assessments. They maintain the PETA-BOA board, which is where you appeal your property tax assessment. And the clerk's office, they deal with the courts. So anything that doesn't run through the auditor's office is going to run through the clerk's office.
Yeah, so we talked about this. Like when people are like, "Hey," I'm like, "Just call the clerk's office; they'll point you in the right direction." Like for sure, I'm like, they probably hate me at this point. They absolutely hate me.
You're their transfer. You're their dumpster. Right?
So, what's your job title?
I am the real property settlement and adjustments manager, department manager.
So she's the one that gets the nasty calls.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
And it's time, right? This is the perfect time.
This is the perfect time. This is when every mistake we made throughout last year shows itself.
So you're saying you make the mistakes? Really?
It's probably 50-50, isn't it?
It probably there is.
You get blamed for all of them, but they're
Yes.
not your fault.
Right, right. So there are things that occur that we fix. They're considered county errors. So those are things like the taxpayer did what they were supposed to do, and somewhere in our system didn't get applied properly, right? So we own that. We fix that. We get them a new tax bill. And then there are issues where we have corresponded with the taxpayer. We've sent them notice that they had a responsibility to do something, and they failed to do that thing, and now they're trying to figure out what to do about it. Some of those circumstances are correctable and some are not. So if they can provide or do the thing that we were asking for in the prior year, then we can move forward with the correction.
Okay. And does that tend to be a credit or a reimbursement? Or does it vary?
It depends.
Okay.
So it depends on the timing. If it's current year taxes, which are 24 pay 25, they're going to correct the current amount owed. If there was a payment made, they will then flood the overage to the fall or do a mid-year surplus check to them. If it was a prior year, so sometimes with you guys, real estate agents, you will list someone's home and you'll notice, hey, they haven't had a homestead for quite some time.
Yeah.
Maybe 3-4 years. They will contact us, and maybe we were asking for something 3 years ago that they never complied with. And then they comply. They file the documents. They provide the documentation. We can go back and we can credit up to 3 years. So then,
Really?
Even though
Up
they
to 3
didn't
years.
provide it to you till 3 years later.
it depends on the circumstance, right? So if it's a residency verification issue where we were saying, hey, we don't believe you live here, prove to us that you do, and these are the things you would utilize to do that, then it would be a surplus check where they would get.
So what if it's just a mistake? So I've had, this is what we were kind of talking about, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here. I've had 2 issues with property taxes in like all the houses I've ever dealt with. Listings, buyers, doesn't really matter. I've had 2 issues. One of them was a reload that we bought in Cool Creek, and we had to sell it because they reload again like 3 or 4 years later, and they had never filed the homestead exemption. Title didn't. I informed them to follow up about the exemption, and they were just honest, like, we forgot. You know what I mean? So, but the crazy thing is they had lived here the whole time. Is there any recourse for that, or it's kind of like, hey, man, like, it just is what it is?
No. So an original application has to be made. That is a huge condition. Yeah, so that has to be validly filed, and the word validly is
It's very specific.
it's very specific. It's not just attempted, right? Like I attempted to pay my light bill and they left my lights on. No, so like you have to validly file that benefit.
Which is why they say keep the receipt,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Well, and you were talking about
Which, for the record, nobody does.
I know.
no.
I'm aware.
You're probably not going to
Like,
tell
make
her
sure you keep your
anything.
receipt. Like, I
I
don't
think
keep my
we
receipt
should
for anything.
start putting a dollar amount on the receipt. Like, this is worth $3,400.
Right, if you lose it.
If you.
So you were talking about the title company because I was saying, back when I started in 2008, title companies did not file the homestead. It was just not part of it. And it was just something that was up to them at the end of the year. And we as realtors usually have our October, November letter that goes out, remind you to get the receipt to show that the title company did it. And you told me that how many rejections, what's that percentage of the title doing their job of doing it?
So the vehicle for filing the application for the homestead is the sales disclosure form, and that occurs at closing. And there are several nuances on that form, and with the variances of how you're purchasing the property, right? So a lot of circumstances on that form is trying to be accomplished. And we have about a 60% rejection rate in Hamilton County. So they submit that form and there's something wrong with it 60% of the time. And
That to me is
That's an insane
astounding.
number.
And I'm just going to say that when you're sitting there at that table and they say, make sure you get a receipt for them, call and make sure it got filed, you need to do that at 60% failure rate. That's
I
crazy.
do. So in a closing, I put a reminder in my phone 60 days out, right? Because you want to wait until the first mortgage payment has kicked in and then a little bit after that. And so the only time I don't do that is like November till the end of the year, right? Because obviously it's too late, right? So then I usually do it week before Christmas is usually, and then, or if they close early December, I'll say that week after Christmas, mainly just because I know it's a government entity, so it's going to have days off or whatever. But do you guys ever sit down with title companies to discuss with them? Because one of the ones that we were talking about off before the show that I was kind of surprised by, but 100% makes sense. Like the marriage one that we're going to talk about, like that's a whole different problem. But if both spouses are not at the closing table, whether seller or buyer, I would assume, right? Well, maybe not so much for
Not
seller, just for
seller.
buyer. It does not count and will not get filed correctly. So if you're signing for your spouse through like a POA or something like that, then it will not count because you told me why, and I
so
can't
there,
remember. But
we were specifically talking about if they are married, but they're purchasing without their spouse.
correct.
So if
Present at closing.
Right. So if Sadie
Yes.
Eldridge is purchasing the property,
Yeah.
and my spouse Matthew Eldridge is not on the mortgage, not on the deed, doesn't have to be at closing, they do not provide the spouse's information on the application, and it specifically states there's like a penalties of perjury right before. And it states like, note, if you want the homestead deduction, your spouse's information is required. And you're like, how would the county know if it's just in Sadie's name that Sadie is married? Well, the deed typically has some indicator. It'll say Sadie Eldridge, a married woman.
And
Or-
I've seen that, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
But I always thought that was kind of, I don't know what the word would be, but a married woman. I'm like, why do you need to know that? I just think that's like.
Do you think that sounds prejudicial?
I just thought it was like a fair housing
That's where
thing.
she's going with it.
No, I
feel
think it was like a fair housing thing, because I'm like, is there something wrong with being a single woman? But I found out it's always something. But I saw that
Yeah.
about 6 months ago.
So
Yeah.
it's vesting too. Like then your spouse would have some kind of rights to the property should something happen to you.
Yeah.
But it's
Which protects you.
Yeah.
Or
It's
them.
definitely going to be in the mortgage. So if the deed doesn't specify, if the deed just says Sadie Eldridge, the mortgage would absolutely say a married woman or a married person. And then we at the county would receive that sales disclosure and we would say, well, where's Sadie's spouse's information? we're not accepting
kick it out.
this document.
So the
And you don't
title-
send it to title, you send it to the house, correct?
We attempt to email. So the preparer is at the top of that document.
Yeah.
So we attempt to email the preparer or give a quick call if it's something like at the bottom of that sales disclosure form, it says SSN or DL.
Yeah.
And only one set of numbers is being provided and they haven't indicated which it is. We're not guessing. So we'll pick up the phone and we'll say, hey, it'll be a quick call, but if it's not a call, we'll email, but we send the taxpayer a certified letter.
Okay, so that brings us to like this conversation that you had with her at a Mexican restaurant, correct?
No, that was with my family.
That was
when
with
we
your
found
family.
out that my son's
And then that's how this ended up happening.
Yeah, my son's exemption fell off.
Fell
He
off.
was freaking out because he lost his exemption, when he got his letter. And he's like, he didn't do anything. He couldn't figure out what he would have done and just thought it was a mistake. And I said, did you refinance? And then he said no. And he says, I don't know. So he called and they told him, it's because you got married. And I'm just going with what I learned in 2008. So you're always learning, but it's been quite a while now. That I was told in the very beginning, it was a refinance would trigger that. Never heard the thing about the marriage would trigger that. So I thought, what are all the triggers? But that was fixable because you said there are some things that are fixable. Mm-hmm. But he went in and said, I didn't know about this, and they just fixed it right there. So he got his exemptions back. But I'd never heard of all of that. And then I found out that if you refinance, that doesn't do anything. So it was all very interesting to me.
And I had found out about it 2 years ago because we had sold a house, and we were talking about this example because we're like, what's the solution and who is responsible? Where a father and a son had bought a place, right? Because the father was involved with the loan, which happens, right? Mm-hmm. And then they moved in with his girlfriend at the time, or fiance at the time. They then got married. I think they lived there for like 2 or 3 years. They got married 6 months before we sold the property, which triggered everything that you're talking about. We sold it in December, and then in May, the new buyer was like, hey, the homestead exemption fell off. The problem we had is they were not really aware of it, right? Like he was in residency and all this other stuff. Most likely the letter went to the father as well, right? Who's in like a whole other county. And it just kind of fell through the cracks, no malicious intent whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, the
Your
new
buyer pays
buyers,
for
their
it.
taxes went up like from 1% to 2% on not necessarily cheap property, by the way. And so it was a pretty significant dollar amount. And, my sellers felt like they had done nothing wrong because all they did was get married and they didn't know, right? Mm-hmm. And then the buyers also felt like they didn't do anything wrong. But post-transaction, like, what do you do? And so we were talking about that, like, who is responsible for that? And you and I were kind of like kicking it around. And I don't know, like, we'd have to talk to an attorney on it to actually find out where it lies because it has closed, actually. There was no malicious or fraudulent intent there.
And it all happened because they got married, which was an unknown issue. They didn't even know it happened.
Correct. So how would you even know to call? It's like every house I list now, I is the responsibility on me or the
buyer's agent when they write an offer?
The buyer's agent, or is it on the seller to call to verify before I list? If you've gotten, that's the real probably answer here is that, any listing appointment, I have to say, have you gotten married in the past year? If yes, we need to verify that because that's the only solution here.
Here's my thing is, like I said, is if you heard through the conversation at all, or you see a wedding picture up on the wall, anything like, did they just get married? Because that is going to go off for your buyer. But the other thing we were talking about, she's like, you can't just call and
Correct.
say, is there a exemption on this property as a buyer's agent? And like we were talking about, there's the January through April process that's a dead zone that we need to know about. At the end of the year, there's an estate sale. If it's completely empty, there's some triggers that you would be looking at that would possibly mean there's no exemption. But the easy out is make a phone call.
Right, and then we talked about that too because there's been, because of the environment that real estate industry is in right now, agents aren't even responsible for covenants and restrictions anymore, right? Because it's not on us because
there's
similar
so
to
many
this,
different ones that they could have changed
they're not
last
updated.
year.
Stuff
Yeah.
falls off in the next month, like whatever it may be.
So that's on the seller, they say.
It's on the seller, right? And so now all of a sudden it's like, I can make the phone call all day, but am I responsible for it or am I not responsible for it? And it's just kind of interesting. And it has not been discussed. And most agents, when I bring this up and talk to them, most agents
They don't know.
They don't know, and they've never dealt with it.
and
I just got
I'm
unlucky
just saying-
enough to find out.
I'm just saying, as a buyer's agent for me, when I'm going to write an offer, who's it going to hurt if we don't find out? Your buyer.
100%.
And we have a fiduciary responsibility to do as best we can to get them their house and not, anything we could stop from being a problem. The phone call's easy. Pick it up. Just make.
I mean, I think
sure.
that's probably to protect the buyer. That's the correct answer. But I would also argue, for me and you as an agent, I would make that phone call. Industry would probably say the buyer would have to be responsible for that phone call.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I don't
But
know. That's an angel question or something, but she does have something
Flag
that
her
we
down.
talked about earlier. Yeah, some stories of what happens when we don't do that due diligence.
Yeah. So
your property taxes go up.
They do.
And then what
They do.
happens?
So this ensued. This bridge between the county and the realtors happened with taxpayers coming, and they were your former clients, maybe still clients. They come to the county and they are in tears because
they're not happy.
This tax bill is twice as much, sometimes 3 times as much, depending on the assessed value and how the cap hit.
Because what it's been assessed at changes immediately when it sells. So I could see it 3 times.
Well,
what if it's a new construction? I mean, that's like on unimproved property that
Correct.
gets turned into.
Yeah. So that's a huge thing. Or they added.
It was like $70 last year.
They
and now
finished the basement before
Yeah.
they sold it, and the bill was based on the prior bill was based on an unfinished basement. So they're at my doorstep and they are crying. They don't know what to do. They just purchased it. They've owned it for 2 months and they have a bill for a year's worth of taxes. They didn't even live there, and at the county, we can't do anything. Not that you guys can do anything at this point because they have closed. But the first phone call they're going to make is their realtor.
Yeah.
And they're going to say what happened. And then the next is going to be the title company.
I mean, even when I dealt with it, I was the list agent, and it was buyer's agent got the first call. I got the second call. Nobody had called the county yet.
Yeah.
Nobody had. And I mean, I get that. It's not a big deal. That's what we're here for. It's I could care less about that, but it's just interesting. Like as I think about it, like there's just some things that come up so rare on our end that are actually way more common than people think, and like it would take
It's
very
an
little
expensive
legwork to
mistake.
actually.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If
Very
you're
expensive.
talking about like a $400,000 house. I mean, that's 4 G's right
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Easy.
But then my
Yeah,
question,
easily.
we talked about whose responsibility is it to figure this all out. But I'm trying to figure this math out or whatever. With a loan officer doing their mortgage,
Shouldn't they know?
shouldn't they be checking to
Well,
see
how
what
are-
that mortgage rate's going to be or
How are
payment?
what are they bound by? Because
They're making their payment decision
No,
of how
I
much
know
they
that.
can afford.
But I think it's all based on the last known tax bill.
Yeah, and so there's liability there. Same for us. Same for everybody. There's protections for liability, right?
It's
Because
the last known tax bill. So
Yeah.
that's what everyone stands back and says, right? Everyone says, "Oh, I did it. It was certified tax
was.
bill."
which is fair, and it's a year old.
It's
at that.
2 years
or
old.
2 years old
at
technically.
that
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah.
So that's bad data. Who wants to represent someone operating on 2-year-old information
And we do it every day.
when a phone call could save these people from $4,000 to $5,000 to $6,000
Yeah.
when they just made their first mortgage payment?
Well, I'm
Yep.
curious. Like I said, if the loan officer didn't catch that, and like you said, so we're at $4,000 a year added to what they owe, is not an escrow.
Right.
So their escrow's less
Sure.
than it should be, which now means their payment's going to go up if we
And they
do
shouldn't
divide
have
by. That's
qualified.
$400, $350 a month.
Yeah.
What their mortgage just went up because of this mistake. that this phone call could have stopped. And now can they afford their home? And this is a story you're probably hearing.
All the time.
What do you suggest to people, like right now, as we're in tax season, right? And tax bills came out, right? People who are closing right now, the question I get asked a lot is, should I pay my property taxes or not? I always tell them, no, it'll get handled through title. And then you'll be waiting on a reimbursement, right? And that can take, I don't know, 90 days, right? Which is pretty normal for any government entity, 90 days. What would you tell people to do? Would you tell them to pay it just to be safe and wait for the reimbursement? Yes.
Well, if
She's shaking her head yes.
But if the deadline was yesterday and you didn't pay it because you had a closing coming up tomorrow,
in 3 weeks, yeah.
You just had a how much percentage?
5% for the first 30 days.
Pay it.
10% after that on the balance.
That's
unpaid.
me. I forgot to pay them yesterday.
Yeah, you're out here like self-righteous, like do
I'm
this, and you
I'm not being
didn't do it
self-righteous.
yourself.
This is why my whole conversation I wanted to have Sadie here is because I'm like, what? I had no idea.
It's like a chef, right? Like you help everybody else with houses, but then like can't do your own.
It's so true though.
Like a chef will cook everybody else a meal and then come home and make mac and cheese for themselves.
But I am my worst client now. I've sold my properties and
I'm my worst client.
I'm my worst. Oh my gosh! I sit back and
statement.
I'm like, would you have done that to your client? Would you have not done that for your client? Like, why in the heck didn't you just do that? You know you're supposed to. And no, I'm my worst. I should hire you next time, just so you can tell me what to do because I don't know what to do.
That.
Yeah, you probably don't want to work with me.
Yeah, actually, no, I don't want to do that. Never mind. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
You'd
So
call me and you'd be like, "What'd you do to sell my house today?"
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Where's my feedback?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
So you had something you said that there's 3 statements that make sure that you can get that homestead exemption. One of those.
So I think there's a lot of misconceptions, or we here at the county, a lot of misconceptions that the taxpayer is saying that they heard from the realtor. So
oh boy.
one of the biggest ones is we're listing our house. So like in a situation where someone's downsizing, they've had their family home, it's a larger home, they're empty nesters, they're going to sell, and they're going to downsize. My realtor told me I needed to keep my homestead on the house I'm selling because it looks more attractive. So I'm not going to file on the one I've moved into until my other ones sell. So I think that matters, or it doesn't matter because they don't understand the carryover provision. It's going to fall off for like
60 days by the time like it kicks in. There's a new one filed.
They don't understand the carryover provision, and they don't understand what qualifies for a homestead.
Okay, the carryover provision.
Let's talk about the carryover provision.
So first, I'm going to tell you your qualifiers. And these are and statements, not or. So you have to occupy, you have to own, and you have to be a resident, an Indiana resident. So all 3 of those things have to be true in order to get the benefit. If you own but don't occupy, and it's the only property you own, which is another misconception, you cannot have the homestead. So a lot of people, it's the only home I own. I live the van life. I rent it out. But I'm entitled to it.
I've lived the van life. It's less than desirable.
It's real. We have a couple of those. So they want the homestead, but they can't because they have roommates and they don't occupy it, right? But the carryover provision is if the deduction is validly in place as of the assessment year, which is 1/1 of any year, it automatically carries over for that assessment year. So right now, 1/1 of 25, your taxes are for 25 pay 26, and if I decided today to rent my home, I would be privy to the homestead benefit if it was validly in place as of 1/1 of 25 for 25 pay 26, and it would fall off for 26 pay 27.
So when you say that, this is it's for this tax year paid in 2026.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how many counties in Indiana pay in arrears? I'm sorry, how many states pay in arrears?
That I don't know. It's not common.
Yeah, I know. It's the worst thing to describe to people.
Yeah, but I think we have one of the best property tax situations in the nation.
I think
and everybody complains about it.
Everyone locally complains about it.
Yeah,
everyone that moves here is
everybody
so
in Texas
excited.
and Chicago is like, this is awesome.
They are. California, New York,
yeah.
Whoa,
they just
gosh.
cannot wait to pay our property taxes. It's a quarter of what they would pay on twice as much property.
Yeah.
Oh,
that
there's
they
people
own.
who their property taxes there's more, as much or more than their mortgage payments
Yeah.
are. It's insane.
Absolutely.
What is some of the things, because you're getting the phone calls, what
Mm-hmm.
are some of the things that people say? What's the reasoning they don't need to pay these kind of taxes? You know,
Oh, I'm stuck on something choking myself.
I think, I would say the value, people are upset about the value.
Which we discussed, except for when they sell.
Yes.
They're not upset then.
They're not upset when they sell, but they're not planning on selling.
Yeah.
So they don't want to pay on that value because in the 90s this is what they paid for it, and
Which is understandable if you're on fixed income.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, I think we all have parents. I believe that's how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And, I get it. I totally get it. But I don't know how to make it fair for everybody. I think we talked about it last week. I wish if we were going to do anything that if you get to a certain age, like retirement age, which varies, right? But like we'll just call it the same as like Social Security age, you're capped out and it won't change, right?
my personal opinion would be the same.
Yeah, and then just up mine as I'm younger, you know what I mean? So I can reap that benefit moving
Yeah.
forward, because that does impact people
Yeah.
who are on fixed income. But then you come into like, not everybody who's on fixed income is like 72 either. Like you have
Correct.
people who are disabled and other
Yes.
things. And so I don't know. I think that's the best solution to it, but nobody's going to like it because I don't care if your taxes go up or down. I only care if mine go up
Right.
or down. Like
We're
that's
very
the world we
siloed.
lived in
Yeah.
anymore.
yeah, so your phone starts ringing and you just, this time of year, just must be no fun.
Yeah, so I like to say my team is pretty amazing. They are beaten and bruised for about a month and a half, and they just, they
just
hang
get
up
yelled
that
at.
phone and they just pick it right back up, and it's incredible to watch. And people are not nice. So we have a couple busy.
Couldn't imagine.
We have a couple busy times, right? Our filing deadline, December-ish, which people are happy and that's fun. It's Christmas. They're filing something. But the month and a half prior to both collection times in May and November 10th are pretty brutal.
You know what's crazy is most people's taxes went up, right? Just because of everything that's going on. One of my clients texted me, his went down, right? And it's
It
in Noblesville.
happens.
It's like right
Oh,
by,
wow.
it's like
Yeah.
just a couple streets from the courthouse, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't think this is right. It went down. I was like, shh, you got everything that everybody wants. Is like, shut up and take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I love that he was like, this doesn't seem accurate, because it is odd for Noblesville's grown so much
Yeah.
for it to actually go down. But that gets into kind of the formula that gets applied, and I know that's more of an assessor's thing.
Yep.
But
Oh, now we know. Assessor, auditor.
right, but like, so you can. So you said you can appeal it, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know. My friend used to be an assessor in Hancock County, and he had told me like right when I first got into the industry, and I was asking questions and everything, and so basically they come and look at your house every so many years. I don't remember what he said, how often it is, and the rest of it is applied based off of a formula, right? And so we sold a house in Crystal Lake years ago. I want to say it was like 5 years ago. And when we were comping it and listing it, the assessed value was higher than the fair market value, which almost never happens, right? It's always, I don't remember the exact percentage that an assessed value is usually the fair market value at a minimum, right?
Yeah.
And it just made no sense to us. And so we called you guys, right? Well, actually, we would have called Marion County because it was south of 96th Street. But they came out and they reassessed it, and we found out that the entire neighborhood was improperly assessed because the formula had kind of accelerated the values through the assessed value too rapidly, basically. And so everybody in that neighborhood, we kind of let them know, like, hey, you can go file, and
Yeah.
because it's you're being assessed too high. So
Did you get every one of those guys as a client? They should be very
no, because people
thankful.
live in that neighborhood. It's a
Forever.
really neat
I
neighborhood.
know exactly what neighborhood it is.
Yeah,
it's
and
really
it's like
cool.
it's right next to IMI, and it's stuck in between a quarry and 465, which you would think is like super counterintuitive as like a desirable place, and people just never never move.
That's correct.
Like they
I
absolutely
do know
love that neighborhood. It's a really cute neighborhood. It's very active and friendly, and everybody knows everybody. And so, not a ton of houses sell there, quite honestly. But it's just interesting to find those kind of things out. And honestly, like I think most people are like, probably calling, they're like, I'm pissed, fix this. And you're like, cool, yeah, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
Like everybody's just instantly mad instead of calling to see if there's a solution. And
Right.
that's got to be really hard for you, because we literally made one phone call and they pulled it up and they're like, yeah, that seems odd. We'll look into it. And they're like,
Yeah.
yep, we'll fix it. And then
That happened to
that
me
easy.
too, because I've had clients, throughout the years call and say, can you see if this is a correct assessment? Many times I find out it is, and I send them the comps and I'm like, it is. And they are okay with it. They just need somebody to validate it. But I did have it happen in Brown County where somebody asked me, and I'm just like, no, that is so off. It was like $200,000 off. And that's what I was asking you earlier is I was shocked that the assessor's office allowed me as a realtor to provide the documentation of this is where the comps are and this is where this house I think should be. And it was instantaneous. They were like, oh, totally agree. And I was thinking, my opinion is we really don't have to have an appraisal done. You can actually come with somebody else who's qualified to make that decision or make that information provided.
Yeah, I think government in general, there's a bad rap, right? And
Yeah.
it's not for lack of experience. There are plenty of experiences in government that are poor. So I think everyone thinks that it's going to be difficult and rigid. The assessor's office will be amazing with working with you, especially if it's above fair market value. I believe their threshold is they have to explain if it's below a certain percentage of fair market value. They have to provide information to the state saying, hey, this is why, or they are required to raise it. So they're bound by a percentage. Typically, they're not at fair market value, and you can appeal the taxes, but they'll try and work with you before.
it's usually like 8 to 10% below.
I feel like I wanted to say 10, and I believe that the actual boots on the ground assessment is every 4 years versus the natural trending that occurs in between. But that's
even
with
then,
a little bit of
with
knowledge
builders,
that I have.
like my wife's gonna hate me for this because our tax bill's gonna go up. But like it says, I'm a 2 garage, I'm a 3 garage.
I see that all the time too.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, I don't want anybody to know. Or like, there's always the house where like you list it and they'll be like, hey, well, we finished that, so we're taxed off of 2,000 square feet, but we're really 2,400 square feet.
And they want that in the listing.
Oh, for sure they do. Yeah.
So, just make sure you
Getting
get
away
that
with
in the
it
listing.
So everyone, some common things that I typically bring someone from the assessor's office with me, and some of the stuff he fields are neighbors. So they pull permits, right? When you do major construction, people will pull permits. So that's how the assessor's office can find out those things. But if they don't, so if you're handy and you're finishing your basement yourself and you have a holiday party and then tax time comes around, the neighbors will call and they will say
On your neighbor, hey, by the way,
it happens
it's
all
now
the time.
finished.
They will call.
Who's got time for that?
You know
and they
what?
will
We have
say-
neighbor issues all the time. When people go look at houses, they're like, do you want to know
Yeah.
about the neighborhood?
Yeah, so it's like, how do you field that? How do you mitigate that?
Wow.
You don't want to involve yourself in that or insert yourself in that. So then if you list a property and you guys, they have access to my board, the assessor's office. So you'll have
Now
listing
we're in trouble for
photos.
giving information.
No, you just have listing photos, and then they're like, man, this assessed value is like $200,000 less than the list price. What's going on? And they're like, oh, they have a finished basement.
Yeah.
How
completely
often
redid it.
do they go through that fact checking?
That I don't know. I think it's probably a variance, but I truly don't know.
A lot of ones downtown I see where an attic has been refinished and turned
Yeah,
into a
that's
bedroom.
cool.
But the problem you have with it is usually the seller is like, oh, I just doubled my square footage, right? But like a lot of time it's a sloped roof,
Yeah,
and the square
there's no
footage,
way.
if
And it
it's
doesn't
less than 4
count.
feet,
Yeah.
the square footage doesn't count. And then, I mean, call it for what it is. I would argue most agents or sellers are not taking a tape measure from the roof line to the floor to measure where the 4 foot line
I do.
starts. And then I said most.
I know.
most. So you're really good about that, evidently, Shelly, but you're really bad about your own property taxes.
Well, when I do my own property, I'm going to make it a bedroom, and it's all the square footage. I'm just
Exactly.
kidding. I know better because I was on the MIBOR board for BLC and talking about square footage,
Yeah.
and there was an appraiser on the board, and he was just telling us, I want to have him on. I've asked him to have him on. All the ways that you lose square footage,
Yeah.
and that doesn't count, and that doesn't count. And the one thing that also hit me was a basement bedroom doesn't count as a bedroom as much as all the other ones. And I've had many appraisals where they call it a 3-bedroom because that 4th one's in the basement. And that was a whole conversation. But no, I would never mess with square footage because it also comes down to what's the price per square foot. And a buyer could come back and say, you said it's 2,000 square foot. It's really 1,800 square foot. It was priced in, we paid too much or whatever. I've seen all of that.
We found
happen.
out a tough way. It was my team member, and they were buying a house. I mean, this is like 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, the appraisal came in like $40K low, and we were like, "What?" And he told us, and like the seller didn't know, we didn't know at the time. You know, I was probably only like 4 years in the business at the time, and it's the first time I dealt with it. And I mean, it's tough conversations, but it just is what it is. Like, you know, I mean,
Do you know how
the
it,
square footage was wrong for livable space? That's the problem with square footage; it's livable space.
well, the basement started happening in the BLC where it states that 88% is finished, and some people change it to 100%. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm not living where this, the sump pump is. But the thing about
I don't think there's a single basement that's 100% finished.
correct, but they put it in there.
I know.
And then that's going into the price per square foot is different. Well, basements don't
For the
count,
record,
but
I also, I put it, I'm just being honest. Like, if there's a little closet with a sump pump, I'm like, 100% finished.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah. Well, that's a whole.
hey, I'm
other
here
story.
to serve my sellers, you know? I'm
Yeah,
just trying
I know,
to do what I
but
can.
I had a client, and he taught me so much. This was years ago, but he was a numbers person, and every house we went into, he pulled up the tax record and he checked the square footage versus the tax records, and then the tax records weren't always correct as well.
They're not,
But I would say 90% of the listings we looked at, the square footage was off by at least 200 to 300, and some of them 1,000 square foot. I look at square footage on every house now, because if they're comping that house because they thought it was this much square footage, and they're going to comp it against the neighborhood because all of the other ones at that square footage, and I find out this one is 800 or 1,000 smaller than all those comps. That's where we get in trouble because we'll write that offer, and now we're, like you said, we're into the appraisal 3 weeks later and we fall apart. That's another thing to check in the. I'm amazed how much square footage is wrong in listings.
Yep. I mean, even my house is, I've listed some houses very similar to mine, and it's like a tri-level on steroids, right? Like you go up a half level to a primary, up another half level to like 3 bedrooms, down a half level to a rec room, down a half level to like a half basement. And I've sold a couple of these houses.
And it's all
a
on
pretty
Main,
popular
right?
floor plan these days. Well, no. So like
It's impossible.
The rec room is technically below grade by like 2 feet. And so usual rule of thumb would be it's below grade, so it doesn't count. I talked to multiple appraisers, and all of the appraisers were like, yeah, it's just a new floor plan. Like, we would count this as above grade. And so like I was able to price things better than some other, because I just did the extra legwork to call some appraisers and be like, come on, like I live in this house. Like, you can't tell me like this is different than the main floor or whatever it is.
It would be interesting for the assessors or what they do because.
Well, for the assessor, I want it to be below grade, so you charge me less.
Correct. But the thing about that is those houses with 4 levels or something like that, we don't have 4 levels in my board to actually put the
Correct.
stuff. So you have 2 main levels. So if you have 800 and then 1,200, your main level is now 2,000 square feet, even though there's 2 levels because we can't do.
I explained
Townhome
it.
is the same.
I
It's
explained
hard.
it in the description. I said
I know, it's hard.
the rec room is added into the main floor square footage.
Do you know what the
So
assessors do with all that weirdness?
No.
the best they can, just like you were talking about the government, right? And so I used to work for Department of Veterans Affairs, right? I did that for like 8 years. And so I know what it's like to be a government employee. And honestly, what you do and the VA are like kind of up there besides like the IRS with like, public enemy number 1.
Right.
And the crazy thing is like everybody would get on, they would talk to you, like the VA would get all this bad publicity and like, you need to be helping people. Everybody, I would say for the most part, everybody I worked with worked their ass off, did nothing but strived every day to help every single veteran they could. And there's just so much. There's just so many people in the United States that you have to help because of benefits and like think how many houses there are. It's insane, right? So, and they're all just doing the best they can, and most of them are doing 110%. I mean, you always get an employee who's not doing the best, but like that's everywhere in society.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Taco Bell, that's
Right.
it. Where you work, that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's with realtors. Like that's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
It's nothing malicious there. And I always felt really bad, and like I have a lot of solidarity with them because they catch a lot of flack. And I was like, man, like I love that job to death, and everybody worked so hard to do everything they could at all times to err on the side of help,
Yep.
not punish. But that's not the perception.
No.
It's
Well, and you're
not
just
the
an
perception.
employee. You did not sit down and send out all those letters. You didn't do the calculation. You did, the government entities doing that. So that's,
You just feel the calls.
I know, and that's
horrible.
but that's in all of life. Like I always call if I've got a problem with, credit card or whatever. I just want to start out with, I know you just work here, but can you help me with this? And I'm pretty frustrated. So if I sound like I'm angry,
It's
I
not
am.
targeted at you.
But it's
yeah.
not you. And I mean, if people could just kind of say that, like, I'm so upset.
You get further.
Well,
You get better help.
I just think,
Yeah.
who wants to sit there and act like, I mean, I'm sorry, I had your job. I'm like, I didn't do this, right? I mean, it would be hard for me to take that day in and day out. That would be.
They do. And to the number, to the volume, is we have over 107,000 homesteads. So we have more real estate parcels, right? But we manage 107,000 homestead deductions. So
that are constantly fluctuating.
that are constantly changing
Every day.
every day, every scenario, every circumstance. I've worked in this department for, it'll be 17 years in September.
Wow.
And the amount of things I've seen are incredible. It's rare that I don't know how to handle a circumstance, but it still happens, where I have to reach out to our attorneys and be like, how did they qualify? I've not run into this before. So the nuances are vast, and the only thing we want to do is provide the benefit for the people that qualify and protect the benefit from the people that don't qualify, because we want the people that do qualify to sustain it. Yeah.
Can you tell me this? I know, if I get back to all the deductions you could possibly have, because we know the mortgage one just fell off.
Are you all of them? It's like
No,
two
no.
pages.
I know, we
back
get
on
like
goldenrod.
on
As a
golden-
former government employee,
yeah.
By the way,
goldenrod.
the goldenrod, let's talk about that real quick.
like your shirt, like it literally
yes.
is that color, that paper.
So,
It is literally a regulation.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That is mailed to us
In
3 to 4
crates?
times a week with their signature, and they have circled
Yeah.
the homestead, because they think they're filing for the benefit
Just by circling it?
and signing it and sending it to us.
That's insane.
So that is how
I want to know
messed up.
what contractor
What people
was like,
think.
hey, goldenrod. And then they have the market on goldenrod.
So-
freaking
Paper.
die.
So this may be a really way off subject, but I just opened up my package from buying a house last January, and my paper's all white. Like, how did I not get goldenrod? Is what I was curious about just a couple of days ago.
Who'd you close with?
Well, we won't put anybody under the table, but so the goldenrod thing. But I know there's like pages and pages and pages, but we're losing a few, right? Like World War I veterans and all those kind of
Yes.
stuff. Or what? Anything else fallen off besides mortgage in the past 4 or 5 years?
So Senate Bill 1 that was just passed is altering quite a huge chunk of this structure. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look like
It's
yet.
still being looked at,
But
yeah.
That's lovely.
currently, how I understand it, we have the disabled veterans deduction, both partial and total. So the distinction is peacetime service and wartime service. The over 65 deduction, the geothermal heating and cooling.
You say these aren't the ones going away.
No, these are current deductions that they can apply for. Solar energy.
Senior citizen one.
No, 65.
So 65 and
65,
older. The best benefit with that
There's a random
is the
one.
circuit breaker.
What? Wait,
breaker?
circuit
What?
breaker. What?
So it's the over 65 circuit breaker, and it's in conjunction with the deduction. So the deduction, the distinction is it reduces the taxable value, where the circuit breaker holds the value from exceeding 1.02% perpetually.
Oh, that's good.
So it's pretty amazing.
So it does
over
limit
time.
what
So
you can go up.
That's two different deductions.
We have one that's, I have a listing coming up in Greenfield, and they get a special deduction because the barn is like.
Heritage barn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heritage barn deduction. So
Because it's like,
it's older than 1950.
and it's built with
Structural integrity.
rod and,
yes.
I can't remember, post and.
Rod.
Yeah. Anyways.
So that gives you another deduction.
So you get
Yeah.
the value of
That's-
the barn deducted, so it zeroes out that barn. And sometimes that's helpful because it can sit in a different cap.
Yeah.
Well, and that
sit in a
saves them
2%
too. Don't
cap.
tear that barn down. It's my exemption.
Yeah.
I know the geothermal one down at Sweetwater. A lot of people have geothermal, and that's where I learned about that exemption. But I've come up here, when I'm here, and people have them up here too.
Yeah.
And hardly anybody ever files that. They don't
Yeah.
know anything about it. And I've come into homes for purchase, and the seller doesn't have it, and it's a geothermal. And I tell my buyers, you need to do this. I just don't think anybody knows
That's
about that
helpful
one.
because a lot of people think they don't know what it is, so they're like, I have a heat pump, can I file it? It's like, no.
That is not what that is.
Yeah.
So some things agents need to maybe study up on because you need to help your buyer get that filed.
How much is that deduction? Do you know?
It's a percentage based
Okay.
on square feet and
I mean, I've
wattage of the
sold
unit.
geothermals, and I was unaware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
what it
full
is.
transparency.
But there's not a little bit here. A lot of people have it.
And I think it's a part of the assessed value because your value is going to be higher than if it's just a normal
Because
heat
they're
and-
expensive.
Well, they're expensive, but they're great. I mean,
Yeah, they
we
last
had it,
forever.
and the VAT, or what do you call it, your cost to heat your home is so much lower.
Yeah, it's really efficient.
It is really efficient.
I'm going to start a bill. There should be a tankless water heater one then.
Okay.
I mean, it's
But you
efficient.
have
We
to have
just need
gas.
more goldenrod.
You're electric with a tankless heater.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So
All right, back to the drawing board. I'll work on it. Just spitballing.
okay.
Well, we could go on forever.
Yeah, there's so much I would love to talk to you
I know
about.
we're getting
man.
ready to get into our stats here so we don't run over, but lots of information. Thank you so much.
Well, I think too, like property taxes is just one of those sticking points, man, and people argue about it.
Just look on
and they're
social media right
upset.
now.
Yeah, and like, people are mad their values went up, and they're not even mad their values went up. They're mad their property
They got caught.
taxes went up. And like I said, I actually fully understand it. I don't think it's that big of a deal, except for I don't know, people who are on fixed income.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
Or barely making it,
I-
and all of a sudden it changes $200.
So
a
here's
month.
one of the things, and this is probably not where I should go with this, and I'll probably get murdered for it, but I don't care. There's this idea that I own land, and I've seen this a lot on social media. Like, not the place I need to be going to for this verifiable
scrolling,
information,
keep
but
scrolling.
they're like, this is my land and I own it. I would love to tell you that that's the truth. You do not. You technically lease that land from the United States. You don't actually own your land. That's the reality of it. And everybody's like, no, like I'm a homesteader and this is my land and blah, 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 and this is my family's. It's not. You're borrowing it from the United States government. That's the reality of it. I mean, the
they
land,
want their money.
The land predated you, and it will survive past you. So it is not yours. That's the reality of it. But that's not how people view it. And I understand why they don't, because people want a sense of privacy and a sense of security. If you need that to feel like you need privacy and security, like then there's something else going on there. And I don't mean like you're doing something malicious or anything, but it's like you want to cut corners. This is just me personally saying this. Like, you want to cut corners because you want something and you don't want somebody else to have a part of it and for it to, like go to other infrastructure, whatever it may be. I don't really care. That's just my personal opinion. It's not even an opinion. Like, that's just factual.
I think the question there too would be, are they using the services?
Yeah.
Everybody, you're going to get
would
like
they want the police to
0.001.
come and help them in a home invasion? Would they want medical response? Would they want
Fire department.
the fire department come put out a fire? Do they enjoy the
Parks.
nice roads?
The roads is always the best one.
Those things I think are where property taxes get a bad rap. People don't associate their services with property taxes.
Correct.
And when you deplete your property taxes, you're going to have to give up services. Do you want your response time to be 20 minutes instead of 5 with a medical emergency?
But the argument will always be, I don't need those services.
Well, I was
Right?
going to say the
Until you
school
do.
one.
Until you
Until
do.
you
But
do.
the school
you
one
do.
is one I've heard many times. My kids are out of school. I don't want to pay that part.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay for your
I don't need
kids
the
to go to
police
school.
because I own a gun. Like, I've heard all of it, man. And it's okay. Like, I love everybody for everything, but I understand the argument. It's just not super, like, based in reality and facts. Because to your point, if your house burns down, you do not have the ability to put out that fire. That's it.
You don't.
And if you never use it, you still have the peace of mind knowing that you can. And there's a tax that
Kind of
comes
like
with
insurance. But
Yeah.
maybe they don't pay for insurance either.
that. I don't know. I'm probably getting the
Yeah,
I'm sure
we could
people are
go
going
on
to hate
and on
me for
and
that.
on and on and on and on. But
But-
that's so. Sadie, thank you. Let's check our.
We'll go into stats real quick. All right, Fishers. I had 55 go on the market. Oh, so first of all, Fishers is like really crazy right now. I had 55 go on the market, anywhere from 195 to 6.2 million. 34 of them are still active. 21 pended within a week, but 41 actually pended last week. So we picked up some inventory. There's 170 on the market. Man, for things that went on the market and sold like for just last week, I mean, it's really low now. I mean, it is 12 days average on market, 7 median. I have 209 total pending, and even the average for that is 20 days average and 4 days median. Noblesville was just really, really curious. Like, I almost feel like the numbers were wrong, but I looked at them. But I had 56 go on the market. There's 155 total on the market right now, anywhere from $1 to 2.9. I do want to talk about the dollar one here in a second. 28 are still active from that week. Only 6 pended last week that were on the market within a week, but 28 actually pended. So some that were older. Noblesville in particular, a ton of stale inventory was eaten up last week, but we did add inventory as a whole because as we're rolling into June, that's going to be the highest inventory month. We know that. Average days on market is 19 and 12, but going back to like everything that is currently pending, the average days on market is 26 and the median is 7. The dollar one. Okay, so it was put up for auction, right? And I in no way means it's like disparaging or anything. It's just something we get asked as agents. And it's like, what if I put this up for auction and I just let it go to the highest bidder, right? Will that increase my value, right? Instead of us putting this target up here and we lose people, we'll let everybody drive it up. That house, which is a very good property, by the way, it was put into an auction for $1. And, it's like, hey, offers due by like this date, auction will be on this date, right? At $1, you would think it would easily sell and you would get a dollar amount. The auction was May 7th, and it is still on the market.
Didn't
because
sell.
people
They had
don't
what's their minimum?
know. I didn't get on the
Yeah,
auction
there's got to
site
be
by
some
no means.
minimum that's maybe.
But here's the
weird.
thing: if there's a minimum, why is it listed as $1 in my book?
Oh,
That doesn't
well,
make
that's
sense.
that's auctions.
So, where you would think intuitively this would bring people in, right, and drive price because, like, hey, let's see what we can get it for, right? And so you would just buy curious people that then just begin to layer, right? It actually probably hurt the property because there wasn't a dollar amount laid out there for people to come and take a look at and either go a little bit higher or a little bit below. And because the system, like as a society, we are not used to purchasing that way, you lose a large segment of your buyer's pool because people just don't know how to do it.
Do you know why I think the answer is? Because when I first saw that, and I know what it means, I figured it was a mistake, and I moved on. Anyway, oh yeah, that's an auction, because I know that's how they do it. But the majority of buyers out there,
They don't know what that means.
no, they mean it's a mistake, and so you would move on because you're looking for a $350,000 house. It says $1. Oh, it's probably 10 million or something. I mean,
Here's the crazy thing: if you're looking for 300 to 350, that don't even come up in your search portal. Because it's $1.
Exist. No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
But I'm
insane.
just saying, nobody that's a great one. Who finds it?
Yeah.
We're only finding it because we're doing the whole city. That's even better. Yeah. Nobody's going to find it.
I have a competing property.
So
That's why it's been
who's
on
the
my
agent?
radar.
Shall we call him and go, hey, we're just
100%
ask?
no, because he is a great agent. I think very highly.
No, I mean, I would ask, like, have you done these before? My curiosity would be talking to that
what
agent.
I don't know is
like,
if the seller was like, this is what I want to do. And you're like, all right, man, whatever. This is whatever.
well, it's
not the best idea.
a
but let's
company,
go.
but we need to call him and tell him, come on, how does this auction thing work?
We could call him.
I mean, I think that would be interesting because first, it's not showing up, or even if they do find it, it's wrong. So I'm just going to move on because even if you see the pictures, it may look like a $600,000 house, but I'm only at 300, so
The
I'm
average
moving
consumer
on.
is not going to be able to just look at something and be like, I think it's worth this.
Well,
right?
I'm just saying, I don't know, but I think we should talk to him. All right, can I move on?
Yeah. I'm
All right.
waiting on you.
Carmel, oh my goodness. If you're looking for a house, go tomorrow. Don't go tomorrow, go today. Carmel had 62 hit the market. Only 26.
That's a ton.
It was a ton. It was usually
In a
40s.
week?
Yeah, and usually 40s. Only 26 of those pended.
And Mother's Day weekend, too.
I know, and I had people that I wanted
I
to
specifically didn't list this weekend because of Mother's
I know,
Day
well.
weekend. Mainly because I'm not trying to get divorced.
But the open house, the open houses that took place, people called me, some agents called me and said, hey, your clients were at my open house. I'm like, first of all, you wanted to hold one today. I wouldn't think anybody would go out. But second of all, my clients were out yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, it's Mother's Day. But anyway.
On this Mother's Day, I got an offer and accepted an offer on Mother's Day this year.
Yesterday, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just another day. So 62, but 26 of those actually pended, but total of 46 pended. So we had a good, 18. I can do the math real quick, but 15 of those still on the market. We didn't suck it all up, but the average days on market for the total 46 that pended was 17, and the median was 5. So the houses that are
46 of the 62.
No, that's total pended. Is pending right now.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, pended.
For the week though.
26 of those,
Okay,
62.
26 of those, okay.
The way we always do it.
I know. I just heard the 46.
And 46
I was like, holy crap.
total in the past 7 days. So 17 and 5. So we're not eating up old inventory. This is the inventory now.
It's the new
17
stuff,
days at the
yeah.
most. And then active, 155 is still or are currently on the market. And that's staying steady. Sold in the past 30 days, 136. And those active days on market is 15 and 4. So we are just staying right at 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks. And we always say a 3 is a 0, a 4 is a 1, because it takes 1 to 2 days to get these offers going, and then they pend 3 days later. So they actually, a 4-day on market is immediately. 5 days on market is 1 day.
Even mine had been on the market for a little bit, but got an offer Sunday. We countered it that night, dealt with counters, got it accepted last night, and it pended today.
Yeah.
It's a 3-day
So
process.
so if we say median days on market is 4, that means it took that long for the process to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually at least 3 days. So anyway, so it's going quickly in Carmel. Westfield, 42 hit the market. 16 of those 42 pended. So, Mother's Day weekend, whatever. Total of 40 pended last week, so almost 8, all of it, just 2 left over. The average days is 44, and the median is 17. 208 are currently active. 156 sold in the past 30 days, and it's 43 average, so that didn't change but by 1, and 14 median. So for the past 30 days, they're staying steady. Again, we know that those 44 and 43 are the new builds causing that to go up. Zionsville, 21 hit the market, a total of 14 of those pended, a total of 19 overall for the past 7 days. Average days on market 8, median 3, which is 0. Active 71. 30 days of past days, 45 sold. average 26, median 4, which is 0. Zionsville, those houses hit the market. You better call the agent now. I will say this. We had, I have an agent looking in the village still. We wrote an offer before we went and looked at it. And I said to this list agent, I said, here's our offer already. I may make some tweaks, but if you're getting offers today, I want to at least be in there to know, and you can send me highest and best or whatever. But I knew this house was going to be gone in that whole day. So I just
That's interesting.
wrote it before I got there.
I've written it. I haven't sent it, but I mean, it's a good way for them to know to actually call you back as they get stuff. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I just wanted to be in the pile.
I've had some really interesting conversations over the past 2 weeks about agents reaching out to me about struggling writing offers that aren't winning and how to write winning offers. And a lot of it is kind of based off of list agents too and parameters that they're putting out there. Now, my hope is it's the seller putting out these these parameters, but the way the information is conveyed, it for sure sounds like the list agent conveying.
Because they don't use those verbiage.
Yeah.
Or they don't even know why they would want to ask that. Yes,
Well,
I
somebody
had
called
that.
me and said they were in a highest best situation, and the list agent literally said, don't send an escalation clause. I'm like,
Yes.
can't do. I can do whatever I want.
Right. But here's my
You
question.
need to, I
Is
can
it-
explain it to you.
I know.
mean,
Is it the listing agent that doesn't understand it, or they don't want to do the math?
That's always my assumption. Is like when a listing agent doesn't want to deal with escalation clauses, the list agent does not understand how to read an escalation clause.
Right. And I think the seller loses every single time.
Yep. Not every time, but a broad majority of
98%
it.
of the
There we go. I'll do 98. Nothing's absolute, right? But,
And we'll never know because it's quantitative and it didn't happen because they wouldn't allow
yeah.
one.
But it's really not that hard to read them. It takes me an extra 10
I
seconds to
love
read
them
it
and I
understand it.
want
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I don't want an as-is addendum, though. I don't want that.
I do not either. Actually, we have a client who wants us to sell a house as is. This is tangent. I don't even know if we need to get into this
No,
right now.
yeah.
But
Yeah, that's
let's
all.
do it real quick. Would you sell a house as is? Unless it's
Yes.
I mean a owner-occupied house as is.
I will, and I have a lot of stipulations of what I go into agent-to-agent remarks and everything else, why it's being sold as is, and after that I put an agent, but no as-is addendums, because I still want the right for my seller to hear what you're concerned about and have the ability to fix it, even though they're telling me they won't. But if I get a phone call and there's a $200 thing that really freaks them
So the
out.
thing is if you're going to sell a house as is in that scenario, personal opinion, and so I'd love to hear what you think, you have to absolutely price it correctly or slightly undervalue, right, to bring people in because, I'm curious what Sadie would think here. It's like just an average consumer. Most consumers think if something is sold as is, something's wrong with it,
Absolutely.
right? And there may be nothing wrong with it.
Absolutely.
The seller doesn't want to do it when I have solutions to be able to
So
fix
do you
that
know
stuff.
my fix on that?
I do not.
We had an inspection before we listed, because I always do that, and the inspection is available for you. The seller did find some things.
And fixed it or said, yeah.
Didn't fix it.
That's good.
Didn't
Yeah.
fix it. And the buyer now knows, and that's part of your seller's disclosure. My buyer now knows who's coming to me, that these are the issues, and if they want it fixed and the price they're going to offer is determined by what's in that purchase agreement this bothers me. We want that sump pump in the crawl space done.
Yeah.
It's in the purchase agreement because they can't ask for it afterwards.
Usually the people who ask me about it, it's there's like some deferred maintenance. Let's just call it for what it is.
Well, exactly, and that's
Like,
what
I
they're
don't
saying.
wanna fix that.
They're out of
Like, I
money,
don't know
or
what
they
to
don't
tell
have time, or they live in Hong Kong. I mean, there's always a reason why it's. Well, that just
pull out.
happened. That's what I'm saying. My buyers bought it. It was as is because they lived in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
They just don't have the ability to do it.
to fix it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I get it.
so
I get
there's
it.
a lot
So there
of
are-
reasons, a lot of
there's
reasons.
a lot, but I try to stay away from it because I think there's better solutions. But
That's a whole nother podcast.
that is a
I
whole
think.
other podcast. We'll talk about it later. How's that? It's a teaser. Anyways, thank
Next
you,
week,
Sadie.
isn't it Drake from Baggy?
It is.
Week,
It is.
so that's our teaser.
Yeah. So thank you, Sadie. I mean, obviously, I don't want to put your phone number out here so people can call you with questions. That's what we usually do, and we would never see you again if I did that. And we'd like to have you back on. So I will not give your information, but I thought it was insanely helpful. It's stuff that I don't know, or it's stuff that I do know, and to find out some of the backstory behind of it, behind
Or just
some
be
of it.
reminded, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we should probably do that. Yeah. And hopefully some agents got some information that they didn't know either. But my goodness, we packed a lot into this hour from
did.
what you had to say.
I will say that you can, which I will follow up with you with my email, so you can send out to other agents. But if you guys are selling in Hamilton County, something you can do is quarterly. I would appreciate not holding till the end of the year, but send me the properties you closed and check on the deductions directly to my email, and I'll let you know. Yes, they filed. No, they didn't. Waiting on this information.
You would do all that? That would be a lot.
Yeah, wait till
Any agents?
Yeah.
Man, it
Could you
actually
imagine
probably
it-
makes your
It's
work
Hamilton
easier.
County.
Because you don't want to hear about it next month or next
well,
year.
That's my
Wow.
goal. I do not want
You
the
wanna be ahead of it.
taxpayers in here upset, and there's nothing we can do.
So 60 days after closing.
She said quarterly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
you can
quarterly.
do it 60 days, but this is the thing. This is what happens to us is in November, we get inundated with calls. My realtor sent me a thank you note,
'Cause that's
a
when I
happy
do it.
Thanksgiving. We're thankful for your business.
File your homestead.
Yes, and we're like already busy then.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I would prefer.
That's so cool that you would do that.
You are helpful to us in the fact that they might not be responding to our letters, but maybe if you shoot them a text and say, "Hey, I checked on your homestead today. You need to contact the county."
Wow,
oh,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
I got that letter.
So do you know? So Marion County and Hamilton County do this marriage thing. Do all of the donut counties do it? Do you
They
know?
should. They don't.
They don't.
They should if they don't.
They
I
should
don't
if they
know if they do or not. I did a presentation at the Auditors Conference last fall, and I brought it up to the entire Indiana Auditors Association that this is what we use, and several of them came to me after and said,
That sounds
"Where
awesome.
do you get
Yeah.
that?"
So not
They
everybody
said,
does it.
Your
Yeah.
county clerk. So if they don't, they should, and they probably are going to start.
You reminded me. I was going to tell real quick. An agent told me what he does in regards to sitting at the closing table to do the reminder for the buyer to do that. So you're saying you get hit in November because I do that November thing, but he sits at the closing table and sets an email on his phone to be sent later, delayed send, for 60 days. And he just sits there right at the table and does it. So it's automatically, I mean, you know how we sit there and we don't have a lot going on for us. And then he just has his email go out in 60 days.
I do it in my calendar. I'll just do last name tax exemption. I've set it out with an alarm, usually at like 10 a.m. And because people don't read emails.
No, not anymore.
So I text it.
Yeah, texting is really...
And that's
emails.
where we're at a disadvantage. Statutorily, everything is
Statutorily, solid
paper.
word.
As a letter, we're statutorily.
Think of all the money you're
bound.
spending of our tax dollars
and
to
we
send a
send-
Which
letter.
comes from your property taxes.
We send certified mail.
Oh my
too.
gosh, even more.
Yeah. So we get a signed green card. If they don't sign for the green card, we send it out first class, like because we get
Yeah.
that returned to us. But
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't go to get the mail for at least a week. I mean,
Man.
that's why you're in your situation with your property.
She's like
tax.
so on top.
No, I had it.
She's like, if I'm going to sell an as is, I'm going to do it like this. I'm
Yeah.
going to do pre-inspection. And she's like, I forgot to pay my property taxes and I get my mail once a week. It's
That's
killing
where
us.
I get it from.
this is called, what is it called? Triage.
Yeah. Oh, my
All right,
gosh.
well, I think we're done.
Yeah, thank you, Sadie, for coming on. We'll have you back on for sure. If I'm Kyle Morris, Morris Property Group, and FC Tucker. If you need to get a hold of me, my number is 317-649-5122.
Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group and FC Tucker. My phone number is 317-201-2601. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Go Pacers.